In the last 15 years, I've been inside a lot of collision repair shops, probably over 100. And in almost every one, there was something unique about the way that shop operated. Some kind of an edge, a system, a habit, a way of leading people that made things run smoother than some of the others. On my sales calls, we'd end up talking about that more than the marketing thing I was actually selling, and those conversations always felt like mini podcast episodes. You know, I'd ask questions like, I really like what you're doing here. Nobody else is doing that. How did you get it to work so well? Well, operational intelligence is my way of bringing those conversations to you. So last week, I was in Charlotte, and I sat down with Brian Davies at BodyWorks Plus. Brian's got one of the strongest shop cultures I have ever seen anywhere. It's a master class in how to create a culture within a body shop. And I wanted to understand how he built it, how he protects it, and what it actually does for him as an owner. You might be surprised to hear how much of that culture he didn't design himself and what that gives him. A team that holds itself accountable, numbers that are front and center, and a shop that doesn't need him to watch every move. I'll be honest with you, the audio is not perfect in here because I wasn't equipped with all my studio equipment, so bear with me on the audio and the video on this one, but I think you're going to enjoy the content. So this is episode 2 of Operational Intelligence with Brian Davies of BodyWorks Plus, and I hope you enjoy.
Welcome to Operational Intelligence. I'm Morgan Felchner, here with my co-host Tom Zoblin, a 15-year collision industry veteran and former marketing agency owner turned AI software builder. Each episode, we dive into one shop owner's unique superpower and unpack the exact steps they took to master it, so you can bring those ideas to life in your own business. Enjoy the episode. We hope you learn as much as we did.
All right, and so Brian, thanks for being my first guest on this podcast. This is all new to me, so we'll figure it out as we go along.
Yeah,
here.
we'll make it work.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, I guess I just kind of want to start with your origin story. Like, how did you get in the business and how did you, come to create BodyWorks Plus and all that stuff? So why don't you give me a little background on yourself?
Sure. So I guess for lack of a better word or term, I'm an Army brat. My dad was full colonel in the military in Vietnam and Korea. Fortunately, he's not with us anymore. He died in 2001. But, he was the type of dad that kind of believed in everything that I wanted to do and kind of helped me a little bit and backed me. But he got involved. He had a guy his nickname was Ski's Auto World down in Fayetteville. I grew up working at that shop, but him and my dad were friends, and he painted my mom's 260Z. So after that, I think my dad kind of, enjoyed Ski and his deal, and so him and a group of guys got into body shop and rental car, salvage yard, and a car lot. It was kind of a group of them. I guess long story short, my dad really was in heavy equipment insurance, and then him and Ski bought out the other guys. So that really gave me a place to grow up and work in the shop. So I've been working in the body shop business since I was a kid. Did a little go-kart racing, motorcycles, so I've always loved kind of the mechanical, engineering thing. So from there, I met my wife now after 30 years. We met in high school, came up to Charlotte, and she went to nursing school, and I went to community college, Central Piedmont, and then went to UNCC and got a degree in mechanical engineering and also manufacturing. And then from there, I worked as an engineer for a company called Scheffler Bearing. But the whole time I was kind of doing stuff on the side. And that shop down in Fayetteville, even though we let that owner, William Wazowski, buy us out, or like I said, Ski, I could use that shop on the weekends. So I was earning extra money. And before I got the engineering job, I worked for a company called Altel. They were putting in car phones. So I got to meet that whole group of salespeople. A lot of people were driving, selling car phones, making big money back then. And a lot of accidents, a lot of wrecking cars. So I got to be kind of that resource and was taking cars home and then really kind of got out of it. But then there was a shop in Fort Mill that would let me use their paint shop or paint booth on the weekends. So obviously my wife got tired driving home to Fayetteville. So I used that shop, and then I found a small place that used to be the old City Toyota body shop in Charlotte. I rented that for $300 for a while and met guy by the name of Jim Harold that was had a Carroll Shelby dealership. So I started doing some Cobras. One of the guys I work with, Ed Waynes, he loved Cobras. So I just happened to go by there, and it turned out he didn't really have anybody doing a good job on the paintwork.
You're talking about the reproduction Cobras, right?
Well, this was the CSX 4000 series, which, we're basically, how it was sold as titles that were still around that Shelby, re-released. So they were real cars. And they did a show in 2001, and I won Best of Show in Charlotte. Got to meet Carol Shelby, which was really cool. But that kind of got me going in the neighborhood, and I was still working that job and doing the engineering thing. And then a good friend of mine, Chuck Hanna, his dad owned the original building on corner of Parkwood and North Davison. So I cashed my 401k out and bought that property, and I was off to the races. But it was, Charlotte and Noda area was really rough back then. But
and that was BodyWorks Plus.
Yeah, and that's when I started BodyWorks Plus.
Yeah, so that is kind of what I want to talk about. So the whole point of this podcast is to find owners, people that I've worked with in the past initially,
right,
and kind of go deep on the thing that I think that you guys do the best here. And for you, it's your culture. That's the thing that, I've been in hundreds of body shops across the country, and certain things stand out to me that people are just doing that's just above and beyond. And to me, it's your culture here. Because I've spent, collectively probably a couple months here at your shop,
Sure.
all through the years. So
yeah, absolutely.
So that's kind of what this is about. So that's where, I want to go kind of deep on that. So I've got some questions to ask you about it, but like your culture, is that something that you've just always thought about, or did it just kind of happen because of the way you run it? Is that something that you've identified as like, if I want to have my own shop and I'm going to buy out my partners, I'm going to focus on this aspect? Yeah,
I think, I played sports and raced motorcycles a little bit, and I was involved in a little bit of, hot rod stuff growing up as a kid. I was pretty fortunate to have some really good football coaches when I was a kid. A guy by the name of Junior Edge, he played for the Rams. And a couple of coaches when I was little were really, inspirational to me. I think, a big part of being, a good leader is being a coach, right? Mm-hmm. And I think, all the things apply, honesty, integrity, but I think a true passion for really wanting to try to drive a team to win, right? And to be the best. And, that's a fickle thing. There's a lot of great coaches. And I think one of the things that's really helped me, and there's several things, but I think one of the things is just a lot of reading and a lot of listening to audiobooks. I've got a book list that I've shared with a lot of people, and I think that book list kind of shortcuts you on experiences that maybe you can get some wisdom from without having to go through the pain. Now, without the pain, you don't learn those lessons. But I think that the coaching was a big part of it. And then I would say later in life, discovered leadership training. I think Mike Jones and that team of people and that group, also Mike Anderson, so a little bit from him. But I think, in the recent past, I went to Discovered Leadership about 7 years ago. And so I think it's, the coaching, the wisdom from the books, and taking heed of the things that match you and your team. And the satisfaction that I think you get from building a crew of people that can do things independently of themselves, right? Yeah. They come up with their own ideas, because the guys always have the best ideas. And I think, give them enough slack and enough control to create their own ideas, but, keeping them in an ordered environment.
So I probably should explain the culture to people that won't be able to see this in the podcast. What I observe, sure, as a guy that has been to a lot of shops. So, and why I chose this topic for you. So, just exactly like you said. So, I guess we could maybe talk about kind of how the guys operate in the shop. Everyone has like a morning meeting, or sometimes it's not every morning, it's maybe every couple of days or something like that. And I've followed production managers around as they go and they hit every guy and they, what do we got going on today? And then they write it down on their notes and they come back and they update CCC.
Sure.
But you guys do something a little bit different, and it's evolved even in the couple of years I've been coming here. So you started out every Monday morning meeting, or I call it your morning meeting every morning. You had your board, and you go through every single car, led by your production manager, but with you standing right there, and the whole team in a semicircle in the chairs, and you go through every single vehicle, and who needs what, and kind of get the team all together. That may be not so different than how some shops operate, but what's different about it to me is a couple of subtle things, like they have to be there on time, or you make them do push-ups, so like,
or you can dance.
Yeah. Right. And then the other thing that is on Fridays that I think is really cool is that you make them go around and tell something that they're looking forward to right over the weekend, or
just something positive, right?
Yeah, what succeeded this week? Something that they saw that they succeeded in. So something that they saw something that they observed, and it could be in somebody else,
right?
Something that went well, or something that they're happy about in the work week,
right? Well, and this is a Jones thing, and I think it's good because I think their culture in general always is looking for the negative. You know, we grow up in, as little kids, are always getting pointed out. What did you do wrong? And, I think that the human nature is to point out the bad. So that really the goal, and I tell new hires and anybody that comes in, it's like, we want to catch somebody doing something good, right? Mm-hmm. Or something positive, or, something in their life that is positive. So, so trying to flip the norm back and, try to start the day on Friday on, who caught somebody doing something positive or something good or something exceptional or doing something out of the ordinary that's, not their job, or just contributing to the team in some kind of positive way, trying to catch people doing something positive. Yeah.
And then what they're looking forward to over the weekend, I think is pretty cool because
that too.
Then kind of what your coworkers are up to, mm-hmm. and now you got something to talk about the next week when they come back in. You're like, hey, how was that fishing trip, or how did such and such go?
Right.
And it builds a family,
mm-hmm.
Kind of environment to the team. So
sure.
I think that's really a cool element. But it's evolved even to now you have Steve, who's your lead production manager,
mm-hmm.
and well, we should also talk about how you guys are paid, I think, because it maybe makes a difference that they're a team-based pay.
Right.
We can get to that in a second.
Sure.
But so Steve has now abandoned. Well, at first it was you guys had a rolling whiteboard, and I've taken video of it, and I'll splice that in so people can see it.
Sure.
You have a rolling whiteboard that Steve has created goals for the day, right?
Correct.
They're week goals, but also day goals.
Mm-hmm.
And it's by department. We're going to have 1 in paint. We're going to have 2 in reassembly. We're going to have 3 in disassembly, whatever, right?
Sure.
And he makes the guys commit to those numbers, right?
Correct.
Tell me if I'm doing any of this wrong.
No, the overview is that we've set, based on the volume, the number of cars we want to do in the month. Let's say we want to try to process 60 to 65 cars. That's kind of the goal now with the crew we have. And obviously, clearly, want to climb that to maybe 70 or 75. But we know what our average RO is, whether the car is, repaired or not repaired. Whether it's a repairable car or it's totaled. We know our average RO is, X dollars. And so how many of each department do we need to get done, right? The goal is to deliver 2 or 3 each day, right? So the goal is to have a minimum of 2 repair plans done every day. And our goal there is try to, when the car hits the door, have it repair planned within 24 to 48 hours, right? And then, 2 to paint, 2 to buff, and 2 to 3 to deliver. So yes, each person is responsible. They commit to something for that day, mm-hmm. right? And at the end of the day, we want those numbers to add up to whatever our goal is, right? Mm-hmm. Basically, 3 out minimum, right? 2 to 3 out every day. And, we do also tie the office into that too. They're committing to, 2 or 3 supplements a day, 2 or 3 leaving for the day, and then also looking at what's coming in for the day, 2 or 3, right? Mm-hmm. So every department or every person really is responsible for that day, and they commit in front of everybody in the morning. And I think this is the key. And again, like we've talked about, that's evolved by the team. It's mm-hmm. not something I created.
Yeah, you didn't create any of that. They did.
No, they did. And I will tell you, just being an ENA on the manufacturing floor, the people on the floor, if they came up with an idea that saved ENA money, they got a check. As an engineer and the designers and people like that, that was our job. That's what we were getting paid for. But the assembly people and the people working on the floor running the machines, if they thought of something that was going to save money, they would get some money from that. And that, to me, when you're in the thick of it, you're in the battle, right? And you're in the weeds, you're going to see things that no manager is going to see. Mm-hmm. You just don't see it.
Yeah, you're not out there all the time.
Yeah, I mean, in the front office, obviously we'll have those ideas with sales and dealing with insurance companies or, new repair procedures or, things that are changing with insurance companies. We do that. But as far as the team and the guys repairing the cars in the shop, that's something that I think that culture evolves. And it's something that they create things on their own to help try to reach the goals, right? It's like, all right, this is the goal target that we want to hit. What are what can we do on a daily basis to hold ourselves accountable? And then also if we say, hey, we're going to accomplish this, you're committing to the team. So you don't want to let the team down, and they don't want to let each other down. And, I think one of my biggest roles on a daily basis, I'm always concerned about, what can I do to facilitate their success, right? And I think, being a servient manager to some degree or owner, you want to be, in a situation, and I've got this from a lot of military books. I know Steve likes Jocko, and, a lot of military leadership books I've read in the past, and things that you've just seen good leaders do. Guy I used to coach with, Mike Baker, same thing. So I think if you create that environment that their ideas are valued, a few of the top ones that always stick in my mind are, and this I think leads to the culture, is, do I have the tools and equipment to do my job? To me, that's my job as an owner, is making sure everything's working, from the toilets to the air conditioning to the frame machines, everything's working like it needs to be. And I think having the right tools and equipment is number one. And number two is, like, are your ideas valued? Do you feel like you have a friend at work? There, some of the things that you think would be most important to people are not. And I think, communicating with the team too, and trying to figure out what makes them tick, right? What's most important to them,
So did Steve come to you with this idea to change your meeting structure, or did he just start doing it and then you observed it and then said, "Hey, I like this. Keep going with it"?
Yeah, we talked about it. We'd say, "Hey, the guys, we're talking about this, and we're thinking about changing this up a little bit."
He suggested it. Or,
yeah. And then I think he discussed it with the team, and they developed that board themselves. Like, right, we have the electronic board that's just a simple Google Doc, which I've shared with a lot of shops. Yeah. And the key is just finding something that works for the team, that everybody is committed to, that they will do consistently.
Yeah, well, here you are. I first saw it, I was here in March, and it's November, and they're still doing it. It's very little changed from when I saw it, what they were doing now.
Well, there's a few more things. We added the office thing to it.
Right, I mean, there's some evolving, but my point is, this was generated by the employees, and because I think one of the hardest things with change management, I mean, I'm learning this.
Sustaining.
Yes. To get people to buy into it and keep doing it every day.
Right.
And I don't know how long it takes. I'm sure there's some behavioral science.
25 days, 20 days.
Before it becomes a habit. But,
right.
I mean, no one's bitching and moaning about this new system. And they're if Steve's out, somebody else jumps in. And so I'm curious, though, did you, when you saw Steve do this, did you come in there and say, "Hey, man, this is a great idea, but you need to do this, and this," or did you just let him just completely 100% own it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I offer up suggestions and what seems to be working, but I'm setting the goals of what, the break even on the business needs to be. And based on what our numbers were last year and the year before, these are the goals and targets we need to hit. So it's like, all right, these are the rules of the game. How can we get there? And I think, just like everything, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention, right? So the guys have invented what they feel works best for them. And it's simple and it's easy to do. It's a manual board, which I know everybody wants to go electronic now. We've done that. But I think and we still do that. So when somebody calls, the girls and anybody answering the phone can look at our Google Doc and, give a customer a realistic update. Right? Or say, "Hey, by the way, I'm not 100% positive. I know things have changed today. So, let me give you a call back and I'll go verify it." And, I'll go shop and check with the guys and verify it, because the board is not instantaneous. And I don't think anything electronic, unless it's automated and it's connected to you, it's going to be 100% up to date.
Well, I've tried to build that.
Yeah. Well, and the problem is, it's got to be something that the team engages in. If you had, and I'm sure we'll solve that problem when the time is right. And I just think some element of employees don't want to, be under somebody's thumb.
Yeah.
Even though they might feel like that they are, they don't want that. I don't want that. I want them to be able to be free thinking. And I think sometimes when things are regimented, and I think that's one of the things that makes the United States incredible, is, the ability for us to be creative, free thinkers. Yeah. And I think when there's too much structure, you lose that element. Then people are going to not do that because they don't want to be outspoken. Or, I was watching, Montelli. He's a guy that's got a theory on, just human nature in general and some of the negative propensities, I guess, that we have as human beings spinning towards the negative, and human nature constantly looking out for me. And I think building a team culture similar to the military and similar to great companies in the past, Built to Last, Good to Great, the E-Myth, all those books, I think look at real world businesses and how did they do that. And I think one of the common things in a lot of that is listening to the people, and being a culture of open-mindedness and the willingness to change. And I think that really, I talk about it all the time, and even with new hires and people we're bringing on is that, one thing we can count on is change. And as us as human beings, we hate change.
This business changes all the time.
It does. Every 2 times a year you get different models and different equipment and new stuff constantly. So
and insurance makes changes.
Right. Everything. Laws change. The environment. What we're dealing with on a daily basis with just what's going on with the world, and with the connectivity with the social media. It hyper intensifies, I think, a lot of people's emotions. And so I think if you have a clear plan, you come to work, you kick ass, you take names. We really strive to want to be the best, and creating that culture of really trying to be the best.
Like the best of Charlotte that you just won.
Yeah, best of Charlotte, that was a great honor, and being voted that.
Another aspect of that meeting, and I want to go past just the meeting part
Sure.
too, but there's a thing that you guys do that's really cool, and you play this game.
Right.
Where you have this little, like a
Ball.
a basketball.
Right.
And you guys sit there and in a circle. I took video of it, so I'll add it in here. But you guys bounce it, try to keep it off the ground for.
Sure.
And who came up with that?
I'd love to say that's our idea, but that's a Mike Jones deal.
Okay.
That's something that they, he does in some of his stuff. But now we did, most of the team's been through it, and it's not something that we all came back and started doing it. We really didn't start doing that consistently until the beginning of this year, and that kind of with the board came about organically again. So
and you do it twice a day.
And we do, yeah. And I will tell you, that's one of the things I think the whole team enjoys a lot.
What do you think that does for the team? Like, what does it build on?
Well, one thing that you can notice, you can see who's engaged right away. I think it livens people up in the morning. I think it gets their mind working. And when we're in tune, we don't miss the ball. We've got a record of 287 hits without dropping. That's a lot. And especially when you have, sometimes one or two people they're handling the customer, but for the most part, we're all engaged in it. And, on Fridays, if you miss the ball, you got to do push-ups. So Fridays is kind of our kind of pick on each other day. So if you miss the ball and it's your fault, and it's a hittable ball, then if you miss, you got to do 10 push-ups.
Well, I'm glad I'm taking my flight out here on Wednesday.
Yeah, we've had some people come. I know Ted's nephew Grady came out, and he was doing a lot of push-ups. Anybody that jumps into it.
Anybody you have visit the shop.
And you can do other stuff. You can do jump jacks, or you can do leg squats, or any kind of exercise. You just have to do 10. So that's kind of a fun competition. But I guess back to how it got created again. That was organic too, similar to the new whiteboard thing. And I think it's just a way for us to kind of connect in the morning. Get each other going. And the other thing is you can see who's engaged. If somebody's not, if the ball is a bad hit and it's short, how many people are diving to get to the ball, right? So it's a really good way to kind of see who's engaging and who's kind of sitting on the sidelines.
So what do you do when you see someone that's kind of disengaged?
Everybody has good days and bad days, but, you tighten them up a little bit. Say, hey, man, let's go for the ball. Or, to me, if somebody makes a good shot and they it's a ricochet off of something and they make the hit, encouraging a good hit. But I think the team really enjoys that. And I'm sure that will evolve too. We've had other ideas, but it's a pretty simple thing. And, I think we're pretty comfortable with it now, so it's probably time to change it. So I'm sure we'll come up with something that involves that. But I think it's it's a great way to kind of welcome each other. It's good for new people, kind of gets them in the groove. Get your hand-eye coordination going. Kind of get you in the right frame of mind in the morning. So that meeting starts with everybody going to the board and putting up there what they're going to commit. We play the game, but it's it's been something I think the team really enjoys, and it kind of just ties us together, I think, and it's just a way to build a little bit of camaraderie and teamwork.
So speaking of that, so in a body shop you have departments, and so in order to be successful, I think you have to have the departments all working together as a team. Do you think that these kinds of things help the departments? Does it break down some of the barriers between the departments?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Paint and parts and body.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the stereotypical, body shops, you got body guys that are kind of,
Anti-painters.
yeah,
Painters are anti-body.
yeah, and then everybody's like, nobody knows what's going on in the office, and they're just on the other side of the wall. So I think, getting everybody engaged is really good, and talking about some of those positives on a Friday, team might be, we might have done a really good job in the office getting a bunch of cars in, and the team sees that, and vice versa. We push hard, and guys stay late. Just the desire to really want to do the right thing.
So that's a good segue to my next question is how, as an owner, what does having a culture like that do for you? Like, does it allow you to not have to keep an eye on things as much, and like be up their butts about, hey, are you doing this? Are you doing this? Because do you feel like this kind of culture that you've built? Because I'll be honest with you, whenever I used to hear culture, I always thought that was such a bullshit term. Like, like I've worked for companies that say, oh, culture, and culture meant, that they had like a Thanksgiving meal and they had, Christmas bonus check or something. Like, there was not really culture the way they thought there was. So culture, I think, can sometimes be a bunch of BS, but here I think it's a legitimate thing. And so
I appreciate that. I mean, I think it's fickle. And are there days that it's not good? Sure, there is. But I think the majority of the days we have here are better.
Yes.
And just to, go back to your original question, I think, it's like when you watch things.
You're talking about when particles are observed.
When particles
are being blasted through those lines.
Yeah, it's the dual the dual slit experiment basically, and what happens is when you observe it does when it's on its own and nobody's watching it does one thing, and then when you observe it changes.
Yes.
So I think there's a lot to be said for if you measure it, it'll get better. So I think if you just let things happen and you don't measure it and you don't have some KPIs that are important to you and to them, and then also ultimately the customer, right? And whoever the payer is, you've got to put enough accountability on some specific things that you can measure it. Because, right, I mean, you got to put accounting together, you got to balance your books, you got to do taxes, you got to do those things. So to me, those are all measurements.
So I want to go deep on all these things.
Sure.
What are those things? What are those KPIs you think are important?
Well, those evolve too, and I think based on what the demands of the environment are, and what's going on in the market, they change. Like, I think the culture will get naturally better if you have really good targets, right? It's like you want to win the mission, right? So I think identifying what your main overall arching goal is, and then you target some real numbers that are easy to measure.
Yeah, so when I was building Baltonic and I was showing it to other shops, one of the features it has in there, it has potential revenue, and so it'll track every lead that you have and every estimate that you've written, and then sold jobs. I've actually had shops tell me that they want to be able to turn that off because they don't want anyone in the back shop knowing how much money the business was making. And that's completely the opposite of what you do here.
Yeah.
It's front and center every single morning, every single day.
Right.
What the revenue is, you share because you have team-based pay, number one,
Sure.
and the shop's success is their success.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that's where I think culture really pays you back here.
Mm-hmm.
Because those guys are aware of the numbers, they're aware. It's not just Brian's making this money. They feel like they're making the money. And would you say that's the case?
Yeah, and I think, I have a little bit of a different philosophy when it comes to that. And, to my detriment at times, I think, in the past, but I think ultimately that's the truer win to me. Mm-hmm. I think you can always buy more stuff and you can always have more things. To me, I'd like to travel a little bit more in life, and I want to cross the finish line, but I want those guys to cross with me.
Yeah.
Right? And I think if they genuinely know, not a greedy person, and I want to do the right things for them so their families are taken care of, and the end result too. If that's the case, then they're going to take care of the customers, and I'll get taken care of too. And as an owner, we sacrifice a lot, and we're putting a lot of risk on the table. And I think sometimes employees don't realize what we're doing, and I think that feeling of entitlement happens sometimes. And if you see that in people, to me, that our culture, that wouldn't work here.
So by being transparent, you think that eliminates people making assumptions like, oh, Brian's sitting there making all this money and we're struggling.
Yeah, I mean, if they're fully aware, what the break even is, and if we're not hitting our numbers, what's going on there.
That means that
somebody's putting, I'm putting more money into the business to make sure things are taken care of, and we have the tools and equipment and the certifications that we need. But yeah, I think, I don't think there's anything wrong with sharing the numbers. And I think if you're driving, and, to me, that's the target, right? And if you don't know what the number needs to be, and you hide that, you're not going to get there.
By having this culture that, guys are all sort of bought in on the same mission and sort of doing, does that allow you to sleep better at night? You're not worried about, stuff being kind of done behind your back, or like, being OEM certified, procedures aren't being missed and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we're human beings. And I think that, we're not doing 300 cars a month. We're processing maybe 40 or 50 repairs. So I don't think it's that difficult, even though the files have a lot of detail on them. I don't think it's that difficult to keep track of it. And, the checklists that we have in place and things that we put in place have been partially created by them as well, matching, the better OEM repair procedures. So we need to have those things in the file, and really the way we've got things set up, it's hard to miss, because we're human. We're going to miss. I don't think it's that they don't want to do it, but I think they want to do it, but it's got to be systems that are easy to do, just like tracking the numbers and, doing the games or doing it. I think a big part of it is making it a game a little bit, right? So it doesn't get stale. Got to change the games up a little bit. But yeah, I think, I do sleep better at night, because I genuinely know that they are concerned, not only for themselves, but for the clients, and knowing that, their name and reputation and their existence relies on it too. And they realize that. And I think that needs to be a reality in any shop. It's just not on the shop owner anymore. So on anybody that touches or deals with that car, including the insurance adjusters, they're responsible for, they're professionals in this industry too.
Yeah. My last question is, if you were to either tell somebody how to do this at their shop, or let's just say you had the opportunity to go buy another shop and it was an existing shop and you needed to import this culture into that shop, is there like a framework that you, like, what would be your steps to get there? What do you think you would do if you had to kind of try to replicate this in somewhere else?
One thing I'm trying to do with the team is, being that I share the numbers, and we get them to higher level training, get them through Discover. I want all those every individual here that we're growing to be their own kind of mini operator, right? They're looking at growing themselves to maybe eventually someday operate their own facility. So
they know that from right now. They know
yes.
that they're being groomed to maybe own their own shop.
Yeah, either that,
run a
if we get
run a location.
Yeah, if we get another environment that we can, we have the opportunities to do the right thing.
So every ATEC out there could
absolutely.
Potentially be a GM at a location.
Absolutely, that's definitely something that I culture and talk about with them, and building those skill sets. So if you can build a machine like an MSO, but more of an independent, you can have those resources to help. So that way, an ATEC type person, which is described in a great book, the E-Myth, a lot of technicians, have that, entrepreneurial, awakening, and they want to open their business, but they're operating as a technician, right? And they're not giving equal time to the business and the marketing. So, creating that operator in an individual, I think, would be, really good. And then put them in an environment where they could focus on just fixing cars, right? And then helping propagate the culture, right? Mm-hmm. So, if I'm going to tell people how to do it, what's the path? I think you got to find some of it for yourself. But I think reading some of the really good books, like The Goal's really good when it comes to fixing bottlenecks. And I think as we get further we get down this road in the industry, we're going to have shared roles. There's just no way everybody's going to stand on the pillar. So being able to have people cross over and fill those bottlenecks without having to just hire an individual just for that job. So I think that's a big one. So,
So cross-training, get everybody cross-trained.
Yeah, right. And, you're not going to have the parts guy welding on a quarter panel, but that parts guy can help with the repair plans and validate parts. Our parts people are...
Well, that's how you do it now, right?
Mm-hmm. So our parts guy, our parts manager and our parts team, Michael and Angie, they're working in the repair plans with the guys. So when the cars get disassembled, they're putting their hands on the parts.
Yeah, so to explain that visually, so when you guys do a tear down a vehicle, you lay out all the damaged parts in some kind of an order. It kind of looks sort of like a dismantled car, mm-hmm. and it's in a bay next to the vehicle. Mm-hmm. And then you have your GM who's writing the
Chris.
Chris. You have the technician that did it, mm-hmm. and you have the parts people. Anybody else in that?
And usually Rachel too. Rachel,
who's a CSR.
Right. Well, she's a repair planner too.
Planner,
right,
CSR.
Right. Yeah, but she's doing both. Yeah. But
so you guys have a mini meeting looking at all the parts before anything's ordered, before the estimate's written at that point, or
the initial estimate might be written, but this is our repair plan. So the technician's putting on any of the additional labor items after he's reviewed, and personally with his own laptop has reviewed the repair procedures, so we know they're current. And this is the different philosophy than a lot. I think the technicians are engaged a little bit more in the process with us than they are in some other cultures. So they're in charge. They're the A-Tech. They're the ones that are going to write their name on that car. So mm-hmm. they're the ones that are responsible for making sure that the repair procedures are reviewed. They're looking at everything that they need to. And then the parts team is validating all the little clips and fasteners.
Yeah, they're picking up the parts,
holding it, putting them in their hand.
Yeah.
Making sure that, because a lot of times, you have a headlight that's got a black backing or chrome backing, and we get that headlight in, they mirror match it, but, you get a chrome backing instead of... Yeah. So there's a lot of little nuances, especially with the small clips and fasteners. So that, to me, and that's something that we've kind of implemented that's new. And that's another thing that because of the need, and we see these issues, what can we come up with?
Sort of cross.
Well, what can we come up with that's going to solve this problem? And, we got a car, $20,000 job ready to go, and then there's, 4 clips missing.
Yeah.
And everybody knew they were there, but,
Yeah.
So taking on that ownership of that small error, I think that's a big part of it. I think that's what's helped, and I guess back to, what would I tell somebody to do? It's a lot of reading. It's a lot of listening to some podcasts. It's finding the path that works for you and your system, because every environment is a little bit different, and every culture, like what we do down in the South and North and South Carolina, might be different than what goes on up north. Just the inherent differences in people. So you got to find what works there. But I think getting everybody through, leadership training specifically, with Mike, it creates an environment of accountability, and mm-hmm. and you got to continue to work on it, and you got to stay outside your comfort zone. But that, to me, that's a solid piece of it. But you have to have the right people that want to do that and are open-minded to do that. So that's part of our hiring process. That I offer that as part of our onboarding. That really is a condition of employment, is them willing to go through the training that's required.
So if you took over a facility, you would put those guys through leadership training, number one. Mm-hmm. You would implement some of the systems you have, like your accountability meetings every morning, at the end of every day.
Definitely put one of the guys, the senior A-Techs that are ready for that spot in there. That's what they want to do. A big part of that would be putting them in there. And then maybe if there was key players in that, we would swap those players, mm-hmm. Get them familiar with it. And
then try to incorporate, find points where multiple departments could align on the phases of a job, mm-hmm. right? So not just parts gets a parts order, but parts gets brought in on the disassembly meeting with the, so try to like cross train, but also like cross integrate, I suppose. Like,
sure.
Bring the departments together at points where maybe it doesn't typically exist in a shop. Like look for points where a quick meeting could make a big difference, because it's not just solving the obvious problem in front of you and making sure that all the parts get ordered correctly, but it starts to build that mm-hmm. culture of correctness and teamsmanship and getting delivering the right product so that you can get the right price for it and so on?
Sure. Well, and to me, one of the culture things is continuous improvement. So, we'll always have a couple of projects on the board that we want to accomplish that's making the space or the environment or some aggravating little nag that's not, not working right or something that needs to be addressed. We'll make that project, and a couple of people will champion that and get that accomplished. So, for example, the SOPs, like we're going through those again. And I think they need to be updated every couple of years. And once you get something working, you can refine it or do it. So we did the repair plan one, and it's generic, but it's specific, and it's it gives a new tech, the understanding of what the goals are, right? And there's some very detailed pieces to it. But I think when people spend a lot of time developing a very specific SOP, I think you're wasting some time there. So what we're working on right now is the parts one, and that needs to be, detailed enough, but also I want it to be in such a way as you bring in a new parts person, you hand that to them, and it's 2 sheets, maybe a couple of visual pictures, handful of pictures integrated, but not a document that's so complicated that, it takes you a month to develop.
To learn it.
Right,
yeah.
and to learn it and develop it. So
Yeah.
we want it to be streamlined and as simple and easy as possible. So, and then one we're working on, the next is going to be the sales one and how we're going to do that. And I think with the new tools and equipment that come out, like some of the stuff that you're working on, innovations in the industry as a whole, from painting robots to other things, I think you're going to have to constantly evolve those.
I have one question. I'm going to jump it in earlier in here, but this is one that I did want to ask. With regards to culture, what are some of the things that you tried that didn't work?
I'm sure there's a lot of them. I could probably ask the guys what didn't work. Multiple, 3 meetings today, morning, noon, and evening. The noon meeting didn't seem to help. That was always trouble kind of coordinate the lunchtime thing. That was one that I think in the morning and the evening really worked. Some of the checklist processes we tried to put into play were too cumbersome.
But nothing like specifically on culture that you tried. That,
I can't say, no, I haven't really put the hammer down and said, we're doing this. And,
because you kind of let it be employee led. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there any like big aha moment that you had with your with regards to culture and like when it just all of a sudden
it clicked?
Yeah, it clicked, or you just realized that this was a good thing, or this is working, or I don't know, just some kind of like when you look back on it.
I think the daily board. I think the aha moment there is really seeing the positive effect of everybody committing to getting what they said they were going to get done that day, and then everybody holding themselves to it. And then if we set the goal for that day, the team's moving resources around, including myself, to facilitate getting that goal met, right? So if something fell off the plate, we couldn't get it delivered, rallying around another vehicle to get that car delivered to still get the 3 cars for the day. I think seeing that, and trying to put that a little bit of that pressure on every day. So at the end of the month or the end of the week, you don't, it's like, I know Anderson talks about it, Mike Anderson, it's like the snake swallowing the rat, right? Getting that rat all the way through the snake. I mean, if you could take those little bites, if you eat that elephant one bite at a time. And I think if you can do that throughout the month and operate on a daily level with a little bit more of a sense of urgency to where you're not, pushing at the last week. Mm-hmm. I think, to me, that daily accountability with a target to get completed by the end of the day.
I agree.
That's huge.
I think the aha moment for me too, for you, was watching those meetings, being here every single day for a week or a couple weeks, watching that meeting and watching the cars move through the team, and then that Friday moment that who did, what's your positive?
Right. What did we get done? Right.
Yeah. What did we get done? Like recapping the success of the week. What are we looking forward to over the weekend? to me, that was the aha moment when I was like, there's a culture here. Like,
Yeah.
there's something really special here that you don't see in other shops.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I mean, it's I'd love to say it was me. I think creating the environment to where it can happen, I think is the big thing. And again, that Gallup deal, and some of the books along the way that I've read, that's really put us in a spot that, trying to create that environment so that can happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big part of it is, trying to be that, and I think that's that servant leader that is, putting the team in a situation where they can win. And that's what, I think that's what it's about. It's like going into battle, we're going into battle to fix these cars right. And we want to come out the other side and make that car look like it's never been touched. And, winning, getting paid what we deserve to get paid, fairly, not being exorbitant about it, but also, getting paid what we deserve to get paid. Because, that's the biggest challenge, is trying to anticipate how to play offense a little bit and get ahead of the curve on, what's coming down the pipe, what rules are going to get changed, and then anticipating what you can do to help protect the consumer, still get paid a decent wage, and then make sure your guys aren't putting themselves in a situation where they're being forced to fix cars substandard because they don't feel like they're going to get the time that they need.
Yeah.
So
So I have one last question too. I'm just curious about this one. If you were to kind of to get where you're at with your culture and everything, like I've been in shops. Probably the worst one that comes to mind is I went in with my partner Raj to a shop where literally the owner, was in a different building, in an office in a different building. It was in they shared a parking lot, but it was in a different building than the shop. And he basically spent all day hiding behind his monitors, and the tail was wagging the dog. The techs were doing whatever they wanted. So if you were that's an extreme on the one end, but if you were a shop owner listening to this podcast, came to it because you realize that you need to shake things up in your shop and you need to make a cultural change, how long do you think it would take to do something? Or at least, is this a long game? Do you think you could start to see immediate results if you started to put some of these things into place, like maybe you change your morning meeting, you change some of these things? Do you think is this something, could you start to feel a quick fix happening at your shop, or is it going to take a long time to get there, to get any noticeable results from trying to change your culture?
I don't think so. I think it's about having, committing yourself, and then having a couple of champions in the shop that see it that way too, and having a couple of key players that want to see that change. Because, really good employees, and I think good, technicians, they want to be around other people that are doing the right thing, I think, and getting help from them. And if I were going to say, just, like with marketing, I think one of the silver bullets everybody's, always asking about, I think Google reviews are one of those. I mean, if you focus on those Google reviews and, really get that word of mouth and do the right thing by the customer, that's going to get, more cars in the door. But when it comes to culture, I think, going inside and, starting with yourself first, right? You're in the biggest room for improvement, right? And this is a Jones thing too. Biggest room for improvement is yourself, right? So not pointing fingers at anybody else, pointing at you first. I think one of the philosophies of good to great and built to last is, it looks at the leaders. And good to great talks about, when things are good, things are going great, the leaders look out the window like, oh, the universe is good. Thank you. It's, I'm lucky. Count my lucky stars, right? And it's just things are good. But then when things are bad, they're looking in the mirror and they're blaming themselves, and I know Steve and I have talked about this, like with Jocko, if there's any problems with the business, it's the leadership. That's number one. So I think if I were going to tell somebody, and I encourage people to go to Discover all the time, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that, but I just know because I've experienced it. And Mike Jones has got a unique environment for body shops because he's spent so much time going to our conferences and coming to our, doing it freely, volunteering to come to our association meetings, like Mike Anderson as well, and taking that commitment to go to something like that. And I think that's an opportunity for you to change within, and then getting a couple of your key players to go as well.
Some internal champions.
Yeah, some internal champions,
page.
and you get on the same page, and then, you know, is it going to create some pain? Yeah, you're going to have some people that don't like it. There's always going to be those people that, you know, put their foot down, draw a line in the sand, and say, "I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it."
So how do you deal with that?
You got to give them an ultimatum. You know, you gotta say, "Look, I'd really like to have you here. We want you to go and take this opportunity and do it." But unfortunately, there's some people that you have to stop the bus and let them off. You know, so I think just really trying to you know, get those right people on the bus.
Even if that means leaving,
Yeah.
losing an ATEC, it might be the best thing for it.
You know, there's a lot of great technicians out there, but you know, if they're really the right kind of technician, they're going to want to help you change it and make it better.
Yeah.
You know, and the worst thing is you got a really good player, and there's a couple other players that are doing whatever they want. The tail's wagging the dog, right?
Yeah.
You got a couple of good technicians that have families, and they, you know, like the core of the business, and they wish the owner would do something, but the owner really doesn't know what to do, or the manager doesn't know what to do, and they allow that bad behavior. So you've got a good person that's going to leave because you're not controlling.
Because they're a bad fit for a bad environment.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And nobody's holding them accountable. You know,
Yeah.
you gotta have some lanes to keep everybody in, right? And you know, you gotta be on work on time. They've got a certain expectations they meet, and if you don't have an employee handbook, and you don't have a course of action to discipline those people, and nobody likes doing that. It's not fun. But if you don't do that, you know, people are going to just
Yeah, I mean, I've seen you guys bounce guys out of here.
right. I mean, that, you know, it's intense. You can't hide, and if you come into this environment and you're going to goof off, it's going to be so obvious that you're just not going to be here, right? And we do give them an environment to, you know, change, right, and work through that, and give them some opportunities to fail, because people are going to fail, and we're all going to fail. But if their heart's in the right place, and you're really trying to get to that goal of, you know, being the best, you know, you want to give them some time to kind of, you know, create that environment for themselves and figure out how they're going to fit in. But yeah. So.
Well, Brian, thanks for all your time on this. I think that covers all my questions. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I look forward to seeing how these podcasts go. I think I think you're on to something, just like you're on something with the software. I think, you know, I'm looking forward to what we can build together.
Yeah.
And
So if you like the format of this podcast and you think you've got something that you'd like to share with other body shop owners, something that you do exceptionally well, I would love to hear about it. Please contact me and let's see about getting you on our show. Thanks.